Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining. I will talk about data science's role in improving UNHCR's population statistics. More specifically, how we use nowcasting and forecasting in the area of the forcibly displaced. So I will go through the UNHCR's official forced displacement figures to give you an idea of how what is currently the state and how data science can help. By then talking about our two main products, which are the nowcasting dashboard and the gravity model. And this is quite a lot for a short presentation, so I won't dive too deep into the products, but I'm very happy to answer any questions at the end. So UNHCR is currently publishing global official figures, which represent the latest numbers in the refugees, asylum seekers, internally displaced, and stateless people. And this comes in the form of a report that shows key statistical trends of what has changed in the past 6 months. And these global and mid-year trends are published twice a year. The mid-year trends are published in November, and the global trends, which show the end-of-year figures, are published towards June. So in June of this year, we will publish the numbers for the end of 2022. So as you can see, there's quite a lag of 4 to 6 months. So there's a gap where we don't know the situation of the global forced displacement. But yeah, it's important to keep in mind that UNHCR does have an operational data portal, which has up-to-date forced displacement figures for the major crises in the world or for specific countries. But it's just like the global figures that we don't have that are very up-to-date. So why does it take so long to get like these forced displacement figures? It's quite a process to get these because keep in mind it covers the entire globe, so every single country in the world. So every operation has to get the data from either the government or other sources, which might have a delay in itself, and then they have to send it to the regional office where it's checked and analyzed. And then it's fed back to them what needs to be changed. And this is basically a cycle that takes a while. And then it's sent to headquarters where it's validated again, reviewed again, and then it has to be confirmed by senior management. So this all takes a very long time, which explains the lag of 4 to 6 months that we experience when the trends are published. So I've already talked about the limitation, which is timeliness. So due to this publishing lag, it's very difficult to have a global overview of the forced displacement situation at any given time. And it's mainly descriptive, this global trend. It tells you the past situation, but it doesn't tell you anything about the future. So data science can help in two ways. One is nowcasting and one is forecasting. And we've used nowcasting to basically create this nowcasting dashboard, which where the aim is to give you an idea of the current forced displacement situation with a lag of just like 2 weeks. But before we dive into this, maybe you've never heard of the term nowcasting before. I hadn't really when I started. So what it refers to is it's usually a term that comes from meteorology and is often used in economics. And it refers to the prediction of the present or the very near future. And it's made up of the two terms now and forecasting. But why would we need to predict the present? I mean, we are in it. But some indicators, for example, in economics, might be the GDP or inflation rate, they take a while to be collected and published. So, but people would like to, economists or people in the government might want to have like an indication of what the current situation looks like. So in this case, the GDP or the inflation rate, or in our case, the forced displacement, are nowcasted to have an indication of how it is now. So this is you can see a screenshot of the dashboard. It's internal for now, so I can't show it, but it's a dashboard which shows the monthly refugee and asylum figures by country pair. So if you go on this dashboard, you will see, for example, now we're in April, so you would see the numbers for the end of March for the total refugee population and the total asylum seeker population. We just cover these two populations for now. And then if the user is interested, they can go down to the regional level or the country level or the country pair level. For example, if you're interested in understanding how many Syrians Germany currently has as asylum seekers or refugees. And the user can also download this data. And yeah, it also includes prediction intervals because this dashboard includes a mix of data, of actual data and estimated data. So in the case where we use models, we include the prediction interval to explain the uncertainty that comes with these estimates. And yeah, so this is what it looks like. But there's a lot going on behind this dashboard. So it took quite a while to be developed because the main and the first step was to identify the data sources for each country. So in the best case scenario, we can use the registration system from UNHCR. It's a system that basically registers asylum seekers and refugees and other forcibly displaced in the system, and this is maintained every day and is super up to date. So the countries that use the system, they have the refugee population and asylum seeker population in their system. So we can just like extract it from there and put it in our dashboard. But not every country in the world has the system. So we had to identify alternative data sources, such as government websites or government databases. And every month, this data is collected by using APIs or web scrapers or other code that automatically downloads the latest data set, and it's stored on our server. And then once we have all that data, we can see and decide whether we have to use models. So in the case where we have the data from the registration system, which is super up to date, we don't need to use any models. We just put it into the dashboard. But in the case where we use government websites, these are usually sometimes published with a lag. So for example, at the end of March, we just had data for some countries in Europe up until the end of January. For example, positive decisions that we need to use to calculate the refugee population. So what we do in that case, we use all the information we have of the positive decisions up until the end of January. And then we apply a model, usually like traditional models such as ARIMA or VAR. We're also looking into LSTMs to basically predict the end of February and the end of March. And yeah, every country is different. So this is all done like almost automatically. But we're also going to work with a data engineer soon who's going to build even more robust data pipelines. And this is then fed into the dashboard. And this cycle is repeated every single month. And just to give you an overview of what the Nowcasting showed at the end of 2022, this is what the refugee displacement looked like. It was, so you can see like a big circle in Europe where due to the Ukraine crisis, we had 15 million, roughly 15 million refugees. And you can also see a lot of refugees in Eastern Africa. And along with on the right-hand side, along with the countries with the largest refugee populations, such as Turkey, Germany, Poland, etc. But so one of the important things to think about is the accuracy, because our nowcasts aren't really valuable if they don't match up at all with the global and mid-year trends. So we always check the accuracy by comparing what we nowcasted and what eventually comes out in the mid or global trends. So the last comparison we did was with the mid-year trends. So we estimated the data for June 2022 and July of last year. And the mid-year trends that show the June 2022 figures came out in November. so like 3 months later. And we compared what we had, and there was just a difference of 1.2%, which is really good because it means now the nowcasting is doing a good job. But this is just like at the global level. If you go down to more like to other levels, such as country level or data source, the accuracy is different. But it gives you an indication of which data source might need to be changed, which country might need to be changed, and etc. And the next comparison we will do is when the global trends come out relatively soon, like in a month or two. But this is, yeah, quite promising. Hopefully it's going to be like this next time as well. But yeah, there are a lot of challenges, obviously. First of all, because we use so many different data sources. Every data source has a different data quality and different data methodologies. So you have to like read about how they actually collect their data and what it refers to. And also we have a lot of scrapers, but if there is a change to a data source format, then it's a problem because you have to change the code and re-update, and it happens quite a lot, unfortunately. So yeah, and then some countries publish their data but round it because the numbers are so small. So if you have rounded data, you lose information, and if you then have to apply a model to it, there's even more uncertainty around it. So there are different sources of uncertainty that come from different things like rounded numbers, modeling, maybe different data quality, etc. And in some cases, we don't even have enough historical data to make accurate predictions. So yeah, where we don't have UNHCR's registration system, there might not even be a government website which publishes data on the forcibly displaced. So in that case, we have to use something else that I didn't mention before, but it's the gravity model that I'll dive into now. But yeah, just to recap, so the Nowcasting is a dashboard which publishes monthly refugee and asylum seeker populations for every country of origin and country of asylum. And this is updated every single month with a lag of like 2 weeks. And it seems to be quite accurate now, but it's a continuous work in progress. So we're always trying to either improve our models or find better data sources. But yeah, this is just a recap before we dive into the gravity model, which is another way data science is trying to help UNHCR. And before I explain what the gravity model is, I thought of explaining what UNHCR's planning figures are. And these are basically future estimates of the forced displacement populations in the next 3 years. So these are used for planning purposes to understand what our funding needs might be in the future, how much funding needs to be collected, and to plan for like resource allocation, like which regions will likely experience more forcibly displaced and need more resources, etc. So this is very important for planning purposes, and this is done by working with experts and the government, and just like sitting all together and thinking about what could happen in the future. And one of the things data science can help in that case is by building basically this gravity model that depends on a trade model, which forecasts annual bilateral flows between country pairs up to 3 years into the future. And this is based on push and pull factors, such as like socioeconomic variables, conflict variables such as deaths, geographical variables such as location of the country and how many other countries it borders with, etc. So the idea is that there are push factors that push people out of a country and pull them into another country. And this gravity model it's also a work in progress, but we have one, and it's used in a Shiny application which we built, which implements scenario building. And scenario building can be used by the operations that need to come up with planning figures by basically giving them a tool to play with. And they can check, for example, if the fatalities in Barbados in 2023 will rise by 30,000, how will this affect the forcibly displaced people that go out of Barbados and into Guatemala? Like, by how much will these increase in the next 3 years? So yeah, this is basically a tool that helps them in this planning figure discussion. But again, like with every model, there are challenges. And with the gravity model, so this model just includes refugees and asylum seekers and Venezuelans for now. So similarly to the Nowcasting, which just includes refugees and asylum seekers. And then as we use so many different factors, data availability, and we predict into the future, we need like forecasts of covariates, like the socioeconomic variables we use or the conflict variables. And it's really difficult sometimes to find these variables which have been forecast into the future, which we need to input into our model. And again, like with the nowcasting, the timeliness of historical data availability is a problem and makes it very challenging. But yeah, this is also being developed even further, and we're thinking of going down to subnational level, which will be exciting, but also challenging. But yeah, this is just an overview of how data science is helping UNHCR with the nowcasting, by giving you an overview of the current forcibly displaced situation, and with the gravity model, which forecasts how many forcibly displaced there will be in the future in specific countries. So that's it. Thank you for listening, and let me know if you have any questions.
Hello, who is the next one?
I think I'm next.
Carrie?
Yep, Kerry.
Hi, Carrie, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yep. So it's time for you to speak now.
I can't turn my video on. It won't turn on. Okay, I'll have a go at sharing my screen.
Open the camera.
Sorry, say that again, please.
Please open your camera.
I'm trying and it won't open. Let me see if I can.
Oh.
Can you see
Please
this?
try again. Open your camera. Oh, we cannot see you.
No, the browser does not have permission.
Can you see me?
I can see you, but I'm unable to open my camera. It isn't. The system isn't allowing me to open my camera.
So now please share your screen.
I will try.
Try it.
Can you see my presentation?
No.
No?
Yeah,
Do you have,
no.
do you have my presentation there?
We have your presentation and we can hear your voice. So how about we help you share the presentation
Perfect.
and you just speak?
Perfect.
Okay. So we will help you share this presentation. And when you want to move to another slide, just tell us.
Perfect.
So you can start now.
Thank you. I'll start by introducing myself while you're bringing up the slides. My name is Kerry Regan. I'm based at the Data Science Campus in the UK, the Office for National Statistics. I'm a program manager with international capability remit. I will wait for my slides. I have a few other hats. I also work, I'm a member of the UN task team on training, competencies and capacity development, and I'm also a member of the program management unit for the UN Regional Hub for Africa. And what we're going to talk about today is how we're trying to strengthen the global statistical system through the use of the UN Global Platform and the UN regional hubs and global hubs, which are emerging. Okay, slide 2. I see you have PDF, so we're just going to scroll down. Okay, yeah, next slide. So overview, what we're going to do very quickly, because we don't have much time, is look at the applications of the UN Global Platform. We're then going to look at the UN regional and global hubs, and we're going to focus in on a use case from the UN regional hub for Africa. Okay, next slide, please. So let's start with the UN Global Platform, and everybody's question is, well, what is it? It's a cloud service ecosystem. It was developed originally by the ONS, but it's now hosted by the UN Statistics Division in New York. It provides a collaborative environment for anybody to access. So it's available to all NSOs across borders. There are some new data sources on the platform, and it offers innovative methods for official statistics. It was originally created to help fill some data gaps and help measure the Sustainable Development Goals for the 2030 agenda. It's under the governance of the UN Committee of Experts on Big Data and Data Science for Official Statistics, which has all of the task teams. All of the UN task teams are all under this governance structure. Okay, next slide, please. So the aims of this global platform are to support or enable innovation, statistical modernization in national statistical offices. It offers a platform for collaboration and knowledge exchange, as we said previously, across borders. So it's available for everybody to access. It does all of this by just providing free access, easy free access for all NSOs. It gives a cloud-based platform, so for those NSOs that don't have the infrastructure to work with big data, the infrastructure is available via the UN Global Platform. It facilitates collaboration across NSOs. It gives us space to experiment, that sandpit environment, very important when you're experimenting with big data. But it also holds use cases that have all, from NSOs that have already used and applied big data. Also shares some of the code and some of the methodologies that have been applied by NSOs. It also hosts a UN Big Data Learning Management System, which is a portal for online learning. Next slide, please. So what's on the platform at the moment? I won't go into too much detail here, but there are two very large sets of data currently there for people to go in and play with. The first one is AIS data, that's shipping data. It's huge. It's a full global data set, of ships, 200,000 vessels, their position, their speed, where their destination, etc. And the data is stemming from December 2018 and is updated in 15-minute intervals. It's huge, but it's there on the platform, and some countries are already using it. The UK uses it, the ONS uses it to get a proxy fast indicator for GDP. There's also send to agri deployment data. This is global Earth observation satellite imagery data. It's in 10 by 10 meter resolution, updated every 10 days. And there's also a data pipeline for processing the satellite data and in situ crop survey data, with examples of where it's been applied and case studies and methodologies, etc. So, we're looking to populate this more. We'd love there to be more big data sources on the global platform. We'd love there to be more case studies, more code, more methods for people to use. And it's there to share. It's there to provide for others to pick up and use. The task teams I talked about, which are all under that governance of the committee of experts, they're all populating this as best they can. And the data science campus also just trying to populate with examples that it has from the UK. Next slide, please. Oh, and I should say, if anyone does have any examples they'd like to share, please do think about sharing them on the platform. There's also this Learning Hub, a portal for online training, which is being populated over time. So all of the task teams that are looking at different sources of big data are developing training that will eventually sit on here. So there are some courses there already. There's a couple on the screen, but this is going to grow over the next couple of years. And this will be free training. This will be available to all NSOs free of charge. And the link is there on the left. Thank you. Next slide, please. What are the costs? I've said that it's free to access, so NSOs can access this free of charge. However, there are some costs. Somebody has to pay for the backup infrastructure and the data provider costs. So currently this is funded via the big data community, if you like. So the UN pays some money, some NSOs are donating into it to keep this switched on. And there's always a seek for donors. So if any of you are listening or watching and think, yes, this is a really good product, we need to keep this running, then please think about donating. Thank you. Next slide, please. So how do you join this UN Global Platform? Well, isn't it? For access, you need to email support@officialstatistics.org, and the email address is there. There's also a Slack channel for this, or a Slack site for this. So there's a link there if anyone is interested in joining this community. There's something here. The UN Global Platform is driven by the needs of the community. So if you want something on this platform, then please do think about asking for it. And also, if you have something to contribute, please do think about getting it onto the platform for sharing. And of course, just use that email address that's on the left there, the support@officialstatistics.org. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, we're going to look at where are these UN regional hubs and global hubs. There are 4 regional hubs. One of them is emerging and one is in transition. And we have 2 global hubs and one is emerging in transition. I'm going to start on the left. I'll start with the UN regional hubs. The first one on the left there is in Brazil, based at IBGE in Rio de Janeiro. Its region it serves is Latin America and the Caribbean. Across the bottom there, the UN Regional Hub for Africa is based in Kigali at the statistical office there. Its region is the whole of Africa. The UN Regional Hub in UAE is based at the FCSC in Dubai, and its remit, its region, is Middle East and North Africa. I'm going to say a little bit here about China. So where you all are in Hangzhou, the UN is becoming a global center. It's emerging into a global center, which we'll talk about in a moment, but it was previously a regional hub. So it's in transition currently, with a new regional hub emerging in Indonesia at BPS. So the region for that is Asia and Pacific. There's also a global hub based in the Basque. It's at the Basque Center for Climate Change in Bilbao, in Spain. It's the Aries Focia Sector Hub. So we're going to take a little look at some of these regional hubs and global hubs on the next few slides. So next slide, please. Okay, what is a regional hub? Well, they each have a memorandum of understanding signed with the UN. But however, I mean, in general, this is what their objectives tend to be. They're there to focus on the region. They're looking at the big data science and data science needs of the region specifically. They can use the UN Global Platform. It provides a shared platform for collaborations and developments and training. So it's there at the hub of it all. But this regional hub can focus on the training and development needs of the region. It can host workshops, it can have webinars, it can have newsletters, etc., and focus on the priorities for that region. It can provide advice, consultancy, and a support role to NSOs. But it's about this shared knowledge exchange, collaboration across borders. It means that the region can focus on what's priority for them. So it is more than just getting access and use of the UN Global Platform in the region. Next slide, please. We're just going to look at some of the highlights from some of the regional hubs first. And the first one is Brazil, established in 2021, a very active regional hub in the Latin America and Caribbean region, working collaboratively with the UNHCR, academia, and the Inter-American Development Bank. The NSO survey that it has conducted it's taken a wide look at what's already going on in the region and has a good grasp of what the priorities are for the region. It has organized workshops, research projects, and UN Big Data Hackathon. I mean, I'm going to say a little bit more here that's not on the slides. Brazil is very, very active. It is running a research project for big data for public statistics, and under that is many areas that it's looking into. But it's hosted so much for the SDGs, big data and confidentiality and the quality of big data. It's targeting as much as it can the young statisticians in the region, which might include undergraduates and graduates, but also professors, in how to share information and collaborate. It's hosted numerous webinars, web scraping for CPI, satellite imagery for land use mapping, and currently running mobile phone data webinars for tourism. I mean, these are accessible to all, not just to the region as well. They broadcast this more widely so that others can tap into it. It has a dedicated website. There's a link there on the slides, and it's also providing support to regional NSOs that need it. So if they want direct support for example, web scraping of CPI, then they will support them. Okay, next slide, please. So highlights from Africa, from the Africa Hub. They're now well established. They have a steering committee in place. It's a collaboration with the UN Economic Commission for Africa and some NSOs in the region on their steering committee, making sure the priorities are being met. They are currently undertaking an NSO survey to understand the big data landscape for Africa, holding workshops with NSOs, understanding their maturity, their needs, their priorities, and that's ongoing. That's still happening. They have a governance structure in place for terms of reference. They've got a strategy, a work plan, and a communication plan, and all in process of getting this onto a dedicated website. They're developing a program of collaborative projects and webinars that support the regional priorities, and I'm going to take a deeper dive into one of those at the end of this if I have time. Okay, next slide, please. For UAE, still undertaking a few areas here, still getting established, but hosted the UN Big Data Road to Expo in January 2022. They've hosted the UN Big Data Hackathon regionally. They're now undertaking an NSO survey to understand the big data landscape and has developed already its website with a link there. Priorities is focusing on its youth and building big data capability. But we'll see more emerging from this hub as it establishes itself more. Thank you. Next slide, please. And here's the hub in transition, China, which is where you are now. They have already hosted, as a regional hub, 3 international big data webinars. They are the hosts of the conference that you're all at currently in Hangzhou. They have developed expertise in the use of Earth observation data for agri-stats with academia, and they're developing insights on e-commerce. So this will now start morphing into a global hub. This was following a proposal to the UN Statistical Commission in March, which was approved. So this is now in transition phase. Thank you. Next slide, please. And Indonesia is the emerging hub for the Asia-Pacific region. Again, following that proposal to the UN Statistical Mission in March, which will see it start to provide something for the region. We will hear more about this in the coming months. I mean, it isn't launched yet officially, I don't think. Next slide, please. So in summary, the UN regional hubs, how are they strengthening the support? Well, they are there to focus on the priorities of the region, to strengthen what's required within the region, but they're also working together. These regional hubs are doing more. They are seeking synergies across the UN regional hubs. They're sharing their challenges, knowledge, expertise, and resources, and they are developing further what's available on the UN global platform. And we see this as a way of strengthening the global statistical system. Okay, next slide, please. Let's take a quick look at the global hubs and what are they? Well, these are a little bit different. So these specialize on one big data topic area and are there for global provision of support. They still use the UN global platform, of course, but they are there now to develop the global needs and provide advice consultancy in a global way on their specific topic of interest. Okay, next slide, please. The first one we're looking at is the UN Global Hub for Ares for SIA Sector Hub. It's artificial intelligence for environmental economic accounting. So it's a very specific topic. It's a collaboration of four areas there, as you can see: the US Geological Survey, the United Nations, the Donostia University, and the Basque Centre for Climate Change. And the last one there, the Basque Centre for Climate Change in Bilbao, that's the physical location of this hub. But they are there to expand this knowledge, to innovate, to seek technology that will provide better support for this specific topic. They help build capability. They work with the regional hubs to build skills in the regional areas. So I know this hub has worked with the Africa hub and has gone over to Kigali to run some workshops. Okay, next slide, please. So here we have it, the emerging global center in Hangzhou. It will focus itself on Earth observation for agriculture statistics and will continue to develop insights on e-commerce. And we'll hear more about this as this emerges in the coming months. Thank you. Next slide, please. Do I have time to go into this project? If that's okay, I can go through this really quickly. It's from the Africa Hub, the collaborative NSO project in web scraping prices for CPI. Next slide, please. So this was identified as a priority for Africa following workshops that were held by the regional hub. Launched its first NSO collaborative project in early 2023, and it was taken up by Ghana, NSOs of Ghana, Nigeria, Senegal, Tunisia, and eventually Rwanda joined the program. seeking across the whole international network of experts on web scraping. 2 people came forward to support this program. First was Luigi Palumbo from the Bank of Italy, a member of the UN task team on scanner data, and Dominik Dabrowski from Statistics Poland, who's on the UN task team on training, plus is part of an SNet web scraping project. So they brought their expertise in. Thank you. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. The program was a combination of virtual training over 4 weeks, so looking at concepts, ethics, Python coding, methodologies, and how to build a web scraper, and then hosted a 1-week face-to-face training at the training center in Kigali. Fabulous outcomes from this collaboration. The usual, develop skills in Python and in building web scrapers. That's the usual you'd expect from a training program. But because they applied this to their individual projects as they were running through, participants got a really good grasp of methodological challenges and the ethical considerations when you start web scraping. They were able to discuss with each other and learned how web scraping was being used in other NSOs. So they've already started to think about how they could maybe do something for tourism and scraping job vacancies. They started to talk more about the strategic direction at the NSO, how would they get senior level buy-in and resources, and started considering even the requirements and maybe a roadmap towards implementation. So just by coming together into that 1 week face-to-face, it was incredible what the NSO started discussing. It was beyond what we thought would happen on this training course. And of course, with a project, you have the training and you immediately apply it to the project. This is the best way to learn that we've found. Next slide, please. Other outcomes, the NSOs that took part were all keen to collaborate further with each other when they left Kigali. They were keen to find other shared projects. They were keen to share their knowledge with others at their NSO. That was key. They wanted to go back to their NSO and teach Python coding skills. And also keen to share what they've done with other African NSOs, and we're developing a series of webinars for them to do that. So we're keen that the learning spreads out across their NSO, and we will go back in 6 months' time and do an impact evaluation, see how that's gone. Next slide, please. I'm sure it's the last slide. And here I'm going to leave you with this, in that Mr. Yusuf Marangwa, the DG at NISR, walked into this room while this training was taking place and was just overwhelmed. A pleasure to be hosting this first collaborative project here in Kigali. Did not know what to expect when I entered the room, but everyone was concentrating and collaborating, and it was so good to see. I'm so impressed and inspired, and this is only the start. I think that's it. Thank you. Open to any questions, although I think I've taken quite a lot of time. My apologies.
Hi, the next one. Who is the next one?
Hello.
Hello.
This is us now.
Okay, please.
Thank
Your
you.
screen?
Yes,
Yeah,
we can see your screen.
I can hear you. I can hear you. Please start now.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, can I start?
Yeah, you can start.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. We are here to talk about Dawn, Data for Workforce Nurturing. Dawn is a partnership that leverages data for the improvement of livelihoods of workers in Mozambique. Next slide, please. Here as speakers are Tiago Borges Coelho, he's founder of UX Information Technologies in Mozambique, and myself speaking, Rodrigo de Reyes, country director of Fundación Capital in Mozambique. Just to tell you about a team, because this is a partnership. First, UX Information Technologies. It's a Mozambican company that creates digital services, leverages legacy systems and mobile phones because of their ubiquity to enable inclusive and sustainable development. Data Elevates, which is also a partner, and unfortunately, because of time, they couldn't be here with us. They are an American company building capacity for social impact organizations and vulnerable populations to use data more effectively for good. And finally, Fundación Capital, which I represent. We work in advancing economic citizenship globally and at scale. Next one, please.
So let me tell you a little bit about Mozambique. So we're a country in the east side of Africa with roughly 30 million people, and we're a very young country. The median age is 18 years. Unfortunately, we have extreme poverty. More than half of our population lives in extreme poverty, and we constantly rank at the bottom of the Human Development and the Youth Development Index. Our labor force is around 14 million people, but 90% of our labor force operates in the informal sector. And as you can see, the monthly incomes are very much skewed towards poverty, with 67% of people earning less than $70 a month. But like most African countries in the sub-Saharan region, we have a high mobile penetration, but unfortunately, internet is still pretty low, as more than half of our population still use basic phones with no data capabilities. So this created a problem for us that we can sum up in: if we could generate more information about the labor markets, we could probably support people at scale in improving their livelihoods. And that's why we created Dawn. Rodri, Dawn?
Sorry, I cannot see this screen yet. So the solution to the problem that Tiago was mentioning, and leveraging the systems that we had already created, which are Bishkar and Connector, which Tiago is going to explain a bit more later. We decided to create Dawn, Data for Workforce Nurturing, as a data warehouse solution that processes anonymized user-generated data from these two systems. These two systems are digital platforms that serve informal workers in Mozambique. So we decided to join them through this data warehouse so that we could generate, process the data, generate insights and tips that could be shared back to workers. And with this information, they could improve their livelihoods. This was an experimental project in Mozambique, and it was the first for organizations. And as I was saying, collects, processes, and feeds data back to workers. We think that this is a way in which we are democratizing access to data, not just for workers. Workers are themselves making this data, so this is a way to loop back the data to them. But also, this information can be used by policymakers. So we like to think that it's a win-win solution for different actors in the field of informal work in Mozambique. Workers, because they get this information that is useful for them, and policymakers, because they can better design policy or make better informed decisions for policy as well.
Okay, so what is our solution? We have this platform that uses mobile legacy systems like USSD and SMS. So it allows users with no internet, with basic mobile phones, or with internet and smartphones to access this service and find work opportunities there. So on one side, we have the Bishkat platform, and on the other side, Fundación Capital created the Connector, which is a virtual assistant chatbot that works over WhatsApp. So people with internet and smartphones can interact with this chatbot and receive information about the labor market. So these two platforms push anonymized raw data into the Dawn data warehouse. So basically, Dawn is a database and a data toolkit that takes this information from both platforms and then processes it to generate data insights. So information that might be useful for these workers and then is pushed back to the workers through both platforms, Biscat and Connector. And what is this, the information that we can push by analyzing the raw data from the platforms? Here are some examples. Rodri, can you take us through them?
Thanks. So this is just an example of how of how the messages are built for users. So for example, we know the times in which clients connect to the system. So we can throw an insight to users like this one. Do you know that customers look for workers like you between 18 hours and 21 hours? Make sure your phone is close by in those times. This was important because along the way we were doing lots of focus groups and we noticed that people maybe didn't have their phones with them at that time when they were most in demand. So this was a good recommendation. And we also saw that many people missed their calls and that's why they didn't get a job. So this information was key for them to access more opportunities. Another example of the kind of data that we have in our system. It's harvest season now. If you have worked in harvesting before, make sure you update your profile on Bishcat to get more jobs. This comes from demand data that we have in our system from clients in different zones of Mozambique, different areas of Mozambique, showing demand for different kind of works. So since we have this information, we can also tell workers that at a certain point of the year, there's more of a certain job, and if they have the ability, they can update their profile, and they're more likely to get those jobs. And then price. We also have information about price. We can give workers a message like this one. Are you charging a competitive price? Check out Connector to find out the average price paid in your profession and location. People can use this, to understand what their price is in comparison to others and check if they can do something about it. On Connector, they can also check a price calculator. And with this price calculator, they can also understand if they're having a profit with this price. So not only are they competitive, but also are they having the adequate income that they deserve. It hasn't changed yet? Yeah, perfect, thank you. So in terms of results, we started at 40,000 users when we started the project in 2021. Now the figures went up to 72,000 by the end of the project, and they're increasing. We also were very worried about the number of women in the platform. We wanted it to make we wanted to make an inclusive platform, especially for women. So it was key for us at least doubling the number of women, and we achieved this. Also, as I was saying in the beginning, our main idea was how do we use data for users, for workers to increase their income. And during the project, this is what we did. The average income of workers increased at least 8% during the project and the implementation of Dawn. And finally, because we were also very worried about an ethical treatment of data, we made an ethics committee, and we got specific training by our partner Data Elevates to process data ethically, to consider data ethics in all our processes. And that's why we created an ethics committee. And Tiago is going to tell us a bit more about how ethics play in our system.
Sure. So we position Dawn at the intersection of using inclusive technologies like USSD and SMS and onboarding users that never used the internet before with data science. So to understand this data and try to derive insights from it, but also development ethics, where we try to upskill our users towards better understanding and better outcomes for their personal development. So Dawn is right in the middle of these three big fields because we deal with inclusive development since we're onboarding people that never used the internet before and are becoming familiarized with these information systems like and using USSD and SMS because it's free. They don't have to buy data and they can suddenly push and pull information from a system at zero cost using their basic feature phones, right? But on the other hand, if you intersect these inclusive technologies with data science, you realize that you have a lot of sensitive data. So how do you deal with consent for users sharing their data? How do you explain to them what is personal identifiable information, right? So we are very careful in treating this data by anonymizing, by getting consent from users because we feel like we need to have a strong data ethics approach in order to treat this data and generate the insights that are so needed, but in a way that's respectful and protects the users. So this is where we position Dawn in terms of our goals. And that was it. Thank you very much. I think we have a couple of minutes to take some questions if there's time. And if you want to follow up and understand more about our work, you can visit dawn.org. We do have an open repository, a public repository on GitHub that we're going to update the link to the website right now. But if you search for Dawn, you're going to find it. And there we've created a sample of data that is collected from these platforms so people can play around and figure out if there's other tips and hints that can help us support our workers so they can get better outcomes and more work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.